Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative.
They're asking me about everything, local, state, federal, all the time. How do I do this? How do I do that? Why can't I get a speed hump? What's going on with the consent decree? Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning.
The people of Louisville deserve a mayor that will listen, that will offer opportunity, that will make sure the most marginalized get the resources they need. I'm here to tell you that I am the right choice because I've been working for you the whole time. I plan to be exactly who I campaigned to be. And every role I've taken in this city has been to serve and take care of people. On May 19th, this is too important for you to stay home. We need you to go vote for your future. Louisville, it is our chance to change the direction and to make it better. Louisville is better when we come together as community. Louisville, it's time.
This is brought to you by the people to elect Shamika Parrish Wright.
Hey y'all, I'm excited. I'm about to go live for my featured speech here at the Black Maternal and Infant Health Symposium at Metro United Way here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm going to be talking about what it meant to serve as a state representative in Frankfort, fighting for maternal and infant health. So tune in.
Is widely recognized for her leadership in advocating Breonna's Law, which is legislation banning no-knock warrants in Louisville following the killing of Breonna Taylor. Her advocacy reflects a deep commitment to accountability, racial justice, and policies that protect Black lives and communities. She's also led regional initiatives such as Grounding the South, Building Our Political Power convenings, and the Kentucky Movement Assembly strengthening networks across the region. Previously, she served as an active learning coach with county health rankings and roadmaps, a collaboration between the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute, where she advanced to associate research center in culture and health project team lead. Such an extensive resume, I love this. And known for showing up, speaking up, and standing with communities that are too far often ignored, Ms. Scott brings a movement, building, and policy lens to conversations about maternal and infant health, and her work underscores the critical connection between racial justice, public policy, and the health and safety of Black families. Without further ado, Ms. Attica Scott.
It was beautiful. Did you get that recorded, Maxwell? All right, good afternoon, y'all. Let's see, I need to do this differently because I don't have slides, but I don't want to take that down, so let me turn it. I'm short anyway, I need to be behind the podium. Let's see. Or will I do it over here? I'll do it over here, maybe. Yeah. Give me a minute to figure it out. Oh, that's perfect. All right, y'all. Okay, I am talking about Black maternal health and policy justice. What a joy. I'm a policy nerd, so I just have to preface it with that, so get ready. But I love it. I believe that policy is one way that we transform communities, because at this point, as a grown woman, I've come to the conclusion that we can't necessarily change people. I love the idea that we can change hearts and minds. That's sweet, that's cute. But once folks are grown and set in their ways, they need policies sometimes to make them do the right thing. So I love some policy. So if any of you watch my Ask Attica podcast, you know that sometimes I start by asking guests, what is bringing you joy today? So I want to start with that. I want to ask y'all, what is bringing you joy today? And I'm only going to ask 2 or 3 people to share, and then I'm going to get right into my talk. So, who wants to share with us what is bringing you joy today? And I think there are mics on all the tables. I know it's after lunch. You probably needed to do some jumping jacks before we got started.
Hello, good afternoon. What is bringing me joy? Providing care to my patients.
I love that, thank you. Someone else, anyone else?
What's bringing me joy is all this great information I'm learning on how to serve the mamas in my program. So this is really been a good conference, is all I want to say. So that's my joy today.
I love that. And one more person, who wants to share what's bringing you joy today?
So this week has been a beautiful week, and I'm going into my 43rd year tomorrow.
Blessings. Yes, give it that up for it.
So what's bringing me joy today is being in this environment, and I'm actually having hope about being a community midwife. So it gives me good hope to be here and to meet and make connections. So thank you all for being present.
Awesome. Thanks for pre-gaming your birthday with us. Appreciate that. So it may seem odd to start the conversation that can, very well, as we've heard before, talk about maternal death or infants not being able to thrive once they're outside of the womb. But I was intentional in putting joy into my topic for today, not because I'm naive at all or I don't know the data. Y'all, I served in Frankfurt. I'm far from naive, and I certainly know the data, and I voted against every single one of those terrible anti-abortion bills. But I want to start with joy because I believe that that's how we move forward. At least that's how I move forward, from a place of joy of knowing that together, collectively, we can transform all those data points that we saw on the slides beforehand. So here's what's bringing me joy today. So being in this room is bringing me joy. Being an advocate for public policy is bringing me joy. Knowing that this evening and in months and years to come, that there are going to be mamas who are going to have healthier pregnancies or choose not to have pregnancies because of people like you in this very room. What we're doing today is so vitally important to the future that we're trying to shape, that we're trying to create. So thank you all so much for being here. So I want to talk about something that's not talked about in policy spaces enough, and that's how national mainstream media and national politicians tend to write off states like Kentucky and write off the southern region. I don't feel like we talk about that enough because oftentimes we don't have the amplification, the mic, the platform to do so in a way that'll reach the people who are doing that to us. So I say that to say that there are folks everywhere across our southern region fighting for infant and maternal health. I mean, y'all, listen, Georgia is like way out in the stratosphere, while the rest of us are looking like, okay, how can we be Georgia? Now, we don't ever want to be each other in our southern states because we've been told that we're all the worst and we're all awful, but there are bright, shining lights. North Carolina is one of them, where I work full-time. It's based in North Carolina. I'm their Kentucky staff person. States in the South are doing big work, important work, and we need to support one another and amplify one another's work. So in Kentucky, we're doing things. It may not feel like it, may not look like it, may not seem like it, but we are. And I'm excited about that because we're not allowing anyone to write us off because they may decide that our voting color is something bright that I often wear that I don't have on today. But that does not really say, the color is in the room, it's present. But that doesn't define who we are at all. What defines who we are is showing up for justice, or standing up for the families who may not feel like they're able to stand up for themselves or to have their own voice, and also in encouraging and providing people with the information, resources, and tools to be their own best advocates, which I know is what happens here at Metro United Way. So I am clear that local and state policies impact Black families pretty much more than what happens in DC. I mean, let's be honest, DC is pretty dysfunctional, as is the state legislature in Kentucky, as is the Metro Council here in Louisville. But despite that, It's important to remember who controls your health department. That's a local election decision. Who decides what new hospitals get built? That's often a state elected official's decision. Who determines Medicaid eligibility is often the state budget decision. So those are local and state decisions that get made that we, I believe, need to pay attention to. So I want to pause here for a minute because I want to make sure you get out of this talk what you need. So I'm talking about public policy. So I want to just check in real quick before I go any further to see if there are any questions that y'all have of me as a former state representative and policy. So let me just pause here for a minute, see if there are any questions. Again, I know that there are mics on the table, but I love having somebody go around with a mic. It just feels right.
I have, well, it's more of a, can you clarify the difference between lobbying and advocating? I hear that a lot in my work, and people are scared to talk to me, and I'm like, so yes, if you could explain the difference, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I believe that all of us are advocates in our own way. You can be an armchair advocate where you send a message to your local state elected official or you make a phone call, right? You're still advocating. You can be an advocate when you show up at events like this symposium, right? That's an advocate. Advocacy is what you do in the local or state legislature when you are standing up for or against a particular issue. Lobbying comes in when the money starts to play a part. Many of us, and I know I started out as an advocate who was not getting paid to be an advocate, but I cared about the issues. I became a grassroots lobbyist when I started working for a 501c3 nonprofit that didn't have a lot of money, but were still able to send us to Metro Council, to the school board. More people need to go to school board meetings, just to plug for the school board. That's all I'm gonna say, this isn't that conversation. And then we, were able to go to Frankfurt to advocate for issues. Now, that's grassroots lobbying. When I started in Frankfurt, I met a whole lot of lobbyists with shirts and ties and high heels. They got paid a lot of money, like my salary equivalent of what they were paid to lobby, just to lobby, not alone, some of the other work that they did. So those are lobbyists. There's no grassroots in front of their name, it's lobbyists. So there is a difference. And those are often the people who can have the big receptions in the state capitol for elected officials to come and get nice hors d'oeuvres and glasses of wine and whatnot. They can wine and dine. While those of us who are grassroots lobbyists are like, it's time to go home, we gotta take care of the family, and get back on the road and do this again tomorrow. So there is some difference. And you also have to do your reporting when you work for a nonprofit about how much time is spent by your staff on lobbying, because the federal government wants to make sure you're not getting funding to do lobbying that you're not reporting that you're doing. So very important question, I appreciate that. Any other questions before I keep going? Again, I want to make sure y'all get out of this what you need from me as a former elected official.
So if you could explain a little bit about if you are a grassroots advocate versus a grassroots organization and what that looks like as far as advocacy and getting involved as a citizen.
Absolutely. So I would say the level of work, whether you're a grassroots organization that may not have a nonprofit status, your level of advocacy sometimes rivals that of nonprofit organizations that are bringing their members who may be coal miners to advocate in the state capitol, for example. You may be doing just as much of that work, but you're not a nonprofit 501c3 organization. So the difference is you don't have the same level of reporting that you may need to do to the IRS or to the state government. You may have a lot more flexibility in how much education you can do for people, either online or through your newsletter, or workshops, or webinars. For example, when you don't have what I consider a barrier, but I get it. Trust me, it pays the bills to work in a nonprofit. I get why people want to become nonprofits, but sometimes the groups that don't have nonprofit status can do so much more because they are not chained to these IRS standards that are really designed to keep us from doing the advocacy and policy work that we need to do to build healthier communities and stronger families. So that's my immediate response to your question about that. I love, if anybody else has a different perspective, please share it. I'll take one more question before I keep going.
I'll be loud. Can you talk about
Absolutely. So I'll start hyper-local, and I'll start with school board. Again, I just don't feel like enough people show up at school board meetings, even know who their school board member is, which is not your fault, because when we're in elected office, we need to make sure that people know who we are. But sometimes these are issues that come before the school board. Whether or not TAP, which my mother was one of the first students in TAP, because she was a teenage pregnancy person, whether or not TAP stays open or closes. That's a decision that's made by the school board. So you need to show up to school board meetings. So I think it's really important for folks to bookmark jefferson.ky.us because it's JCPS's website, and you can go and find out who your school board member is. Same with Louisville Metro Council. You can bookmark, and I'll get you this one. You can bookmark louisvilleky.gov, and you can type in your address. If you don't know who your council member is, you can look it up by typing in your address. And it's important to know the Metro Council full body meets the second and fourth Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. Y'all, I haven't served on Metro Council since 2015, and it has not changed. The second and fourth Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock, Louisville Metro Council meets. And then they have tons of committees that meet at other times. Sometimes they have coffee with your council person. Show up to that if you're able to, or ask someone else who can go to go. If you work a full-time job that doesn't allow you that flexibility, ask somebody you know who may be retired if they can go and show up, right? And be someone who's taking notes and then sharing back with you what happened at that meeting with the council person. Make sure that you're clear on their email addresses, their phone numbers, so that if you need to, right now, for example, reach out to your council member to say, hey, I just learned about XYZ, what's going on in Louisville, you're able to do that. And most of them, whether school board, it's hard, a little bit harder to get in touch with them. Metro Council, pretty easy. They all have a staff person, and most of them are open to meeting with you if you're one of their constituents. Absolutely will. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're coming from. Most of them are open to meeting with you. State legislature. Bookmark legislature.ky.gov. It's actually, I'm a website nerd when it comes to state legislature. Kentucky has one of the best websites. So bookmark legislature.ky.gov. Again, if you don't know who your person is, type in your address. It will tell you who your state representative is and who your state senator is. I encourage everyone, try to get 30 minutes. Don't ask for more than 30 minutes because y'all, if you're state representative, you're representing about 44,000 people. If you're state senator, you're representing about 120,000 people. Most of the time, they don't have more than about 30 minutes to give you. That's fine, because after 30 minutes, you're probably talking in circles and saying the same thing anyway. So get it done. All they want to know is what is it that you want, and what can I do to help you? That's really all they want to know. So try to get 30 minutes in with your state rep, your state senator, before the session begins again in January. It's over now, done. But before it begins in January, try to get that time in with them, because once the session starts, you can almost forget it. I mean, really, just forget it, because at this point, March of Dimes already has their lobby day planned for 2027. So imagine they got theirs planned, as does dozens of other groups across the Commonwealth. So those are my thoughts on connecting to and reaching out with your local and state representatives to get time on their calendar before there is an issue. Because if you wait till there's an issue, you're going to be in line in front of all these other folks who already have their ear. So you want to get their ear now when there may not be something controversial or hot. But instead, you want to get to know them so that they can get to know you. All right. So I want to share a little bit about myself before, as I'm moving through this talk and what brought me to serving in office. So my mother died when I was 16. My brother was 12 from an addiction. She struggled with addiction from an overdose. She struggled with an addiction to alcohol and drugs. And it was just too much for her 33-year-old body. And so that was a hard, devastating hit. And she had a DNC. I didn't know what it was. I remember sitting between her legs while she was braiding my hair. And of course they knew I didn't know what it was, but she and my aunt were just talking about it. And I was like, oh, my mom had a DNC. I didn't know what that was. And then when I learned, I was like, oh, okay, years later. And then my father was in and out of jail here in Louisville. And so I wanted to make sure that when I served in office, I was standing up for families like mine, that I had lived experience that I was bringing to elected office, not just the desire to have power, domination, and control over people, which is really what our state legislature is trying to do. And I won't get into much of a political conversation because I didn't do a disclaimer, but these At this point, y'all know these are all my thoughts. and not anybody else's, in case anybody was wondering. And so I ended up running for office because some girlfriends and I were sitting around the table for months and decided years ago, we gotta have some people in office who are gonna fight for us. And we didn't even know who half the folks were in office, who were supposed to be representing us. We definitely didn't have their ear, didn't have anybody saying to us, you can actually reach out to them and schedule a meeting. Nobody was saying that to us. Part of the reason is because those elected officials were never coming around to spaces that we were in. So they were like, so we need somebody to run, and Attica, you're the biggest square in our group, you have the less skeletons in your closet, so we wanted to be you. And I'm gonna tell you, full disclosure, one of those people was current Councilwoman Shamika Parrish-Wright, and she shares her story often, because she had a felony conviction, she didn't think at that time she could run because people are so judgmental. So judgmental, right? And sometimes claim to believe in second and third and fourth and however many chances people need, but then don't actually want to give those chances. And so that's why I'm so glad that she's now serving in office and decided at some point that her story was more important than the fear or concern that people would judge her because of that conviction. And so I served in office. And I want to be clear that serving in office is not the only way to infant and maternal health justice. Voting is not the only way to infant and maternal health justice. But policy change is one of those many ways to maternal and infant health justice. And so there's a difference between structural change and symbolic win. So I want to talk about that a little bit because sometimes I feel like every win should be celebrated, every win, including small wins, but I want people to understand the difference. So for example, a symbolic win is we passed a resolution declaring the infant and Black maternal health crisis a crisis. I love a good resolution. The structural change is we passed legislation like the Maternal Care Act. We passed legislation that makes a difference in people's lives. We passed legislation to make sure that people can use Medicaid to cover doula support services, right? That's structural change. Symbolic change symbolic win is a really good, strong social media campaign. I love a good live or a post or a reel, but the structural change is actually having the tax removed from menstrual hygiene products and baby products. That's the structural change. So that's what I was working on as a state representative. And so I went to Frankfurt, y'all, as the first Black woman in almost 20 years to be elected. What in the world was Kentucky doing for 2 decades that there was no Black woman serving in our state legislature? Not a one. Never a one, as my grandmother would say. Not a one. And so I was elected to serve, was the only one for 4 years, and I put on my sneakers and went knocking on doors everywhere I could across Kentucky to get more Black women and women of color elected, and we elected the first ever Indian immigrant to serve in our state legislature, and that was Representative Nemo Kulkarni, who does just such good, amazing work, and I appreciate her and her leadership. But there's a thing that happens in Frankfurt when you're the only one, and especially a Black woman. I literally had a state representative ask if I needed the state troopers to be called because my intern from the University of Louisville, a young Black woman, was fixing my bun. It had started to come loose and she was fixing it. And he came over and he said, Rep. Scott, do you need me to call the state troopers for you? For what? For what? Because you've never, ever, literally ever seen anyone with natural hair serving in our state legislature. So you lost your mind. Plum lost your mind and thought that I needed it. First of all, why would you think that I, as a Black woman, want you to call any kind of law enforcement for me? Y'all already call it on me. Certainly, I don't want you to call it for me. And not on another Black woman who's trying to fix my crown. It doesn't even make sense. Oh, but you know, there's so many gentlemen up there. They were so gentlemanly that they would let doors slam in my face. Like literally walk, go to the door, just let it slam in my face. And what I learned from that experience is that I needed to make sure that I held the door open for the next group of Black women and women of color who came after me to serve. And now we have like 5 Black women serving, Indian immigrant woman. We have more than tripled the numbers, more than quadrupled the numbers from the time that I was elected to serve in the state legislature. And that was important. That was absolutely important. So before I go any further, again, I want to pause and check to see if anyone has any questions, because again, I want this to be what you need and want it to be from the time that you have with me. So let's see, we'll pause for a minute, see if there are any questions. Oh, we got one all in the back. I'm sorry, I can't hear you because of the air conditioning.
I was hearing you mention JCPS, the board, and I'm a parent of kids that attend JCPS, and I know there was a change where it gave the superintendent more power. What does that mean?
More power that he did not ask for and actually said very clearly that he did not want. I have not followed that issue as closely as I would like to because there were so many issues going on in Frankfurt, but what I will tell you from conversations with state legislators from Louisville, the move is for who comes after him. The move is not for him and to give him power, because remember, he's a black man, so they definitely were not intentionally trying to give him more power. It's for who comes after him to be able to allow the state legislature basically to control JCPS, which I'm sure y'all know by now, they've been trying to take over JCPS for a long time. So sometimes when they do things, it's not for the person who's currently in the position, it's for forecasting for who's gonna come next. Because I'm not convinced that our current superintendent is gonna be here more than a year. I mean, okay, that's another conversation. Woo, child, help me. It's not what we're talking about right now. But any other questions before I move forward? So I will try to find out more about that piece of legislation because I did not follow it closely.
I got one more for you.
Okay.
If someone wants to run for office, specifically to be a state representative, where do they start?
Absolutely. So if you want to run for office, particularly to be a state representative, one thing you would need to do is know what's happening across Kentucky. Even if you're running in Louisville, you need to know what's happening in other parts of our Commonwealth, because you're going to be asked to vote on issues that impact Whitesburg, Kentucky, but don't necessarily impact Jefferson County. But you need to be able to make an informed decision. The other thing I would say is be involved locally, wherever your district would be, where you want to run, in what's happening in that district. Business association meetings, neighborhood association meetings, whatever is happening, try to get involved as much as you can, because when you go out and you're knocking on doors or you're making phone calls, you need to be informed. You need to be educated rather than being someone who shows up and they're asking you about this new business that's coming and you're like, well, I don't know anything about it. I just know I want to get to Frankfurt and be your state rep. Versus the next person who knocks on the door who says, yes, I actually was at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and what they've decided they want to do is build a telecommunications hotel or data center in our backyard. So you want to be able to be informed when that comes up. The other thing that I would say to do is, if there are any training programs that you're interested in, get involved in those training programs. I went through a training program specifically for Democratic women who are interested in running for office. There are similar ones in Kentucky for Republican women who want to run for office. There are training programs that exist. And then finally, I would say one of the things that I did was I found a mentor who had been in elected office and asked that person to just help guide me. If I had some tough questions, I could go to them and they would be honest with me. So I think it's really important to either find someone currently in the position you're seeking or who may have been in that position so that you can get the real deal from them versus just thinking it's interviews on TV all the time, because it's much more than that. All right. So I'll keep asking y'all if y'all have questions. I want to get into some more of the data that some of it you've already heard, but it's important for me to reinforce some of it. We know that Black women die from pregnancy-related causes at 4 times higher rate than white women. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh, if it were white women dying at 4 times the rate as Black women, it would be an emergency, a political crisis right now at every level, and all kinds of funding would be invested into addressing the issue. Kind of like the opioid crisis, if we're honest about it. Because there was not as much interest or investment when my mother overdosed, but when the opioid crisis hit mostly white rural areas, all of a sudden there were documentaries that painted it as, something that really hurts families versus these Black people who sell drugs to each other all the time. And there's funding, and lots of funding, and lots of funding for the opioid crisis at every single level. So here we are. Up to 45% of maternal deaths happen in the weeks after delivery. That's something that I learned about when I worked at County Health Rankings and Roadmaps. I didn't know that as a mom of two. My daughter was a high-risk pregnancy, but I mean, I wasn't reading research papers about what was going on. I was just trying to have a healthy pregnancy if that was possible. And then it also became important to me as I served in the state legislature, because the reason I asked the question that I did is because there were so many lies, y'all, that they told in the state capitol about abortion and maternal health. So it's important for us to remember that when the casseroles have been eaten, when the flowers no longer come, when insurance is about to run out, that's when people are probably having their most difficult time postpartum. And yes, Black women experience postpartum depression, and we don't necessarily go and seek help at the same rate as our white counterparts for lots of reasons. We heard about stigma. Stigma is one of those reasons. It's true, and it's unfortunate. Actually, 57% of Black women are least likely to begin treatment for postpartum depression than white women. That was a number that I found staggering, because I didn't know it. And this is about policy. This is about barriers to seeking support. It's about what's invested in your community and what's not. When I was looking for some support for my kids and mental health support, there was only one place at that time in the West End of Louisville where I could take them for mental health support for children. One place. There's 55,000 people who live in the West End of Louisville, and there was one place to go take kids for mental health support at that time. That's how much we are under-invested and under-supported in the West End of Louisville, predominantly Black West End of Louisville. So I want to break this down simply, because civic education, I believe, is my power. And it's why I titled this talk, Black Maternal Health and Policy Justice, What a Joy. Policy justice is a joy. Can we clap it up for policy justice? So are there any questions for me about what policy justice means? Or any questions about policy before I go further? Just want to check in. All right, it's okay if it's not, because I have a lot to say about policy. So I want to talk about the Maternal Care Act, which I filed for many years during my time as a state representative. For many years. And it did not end up even getting a hearing. One of the reasons that doesn't get talked about often at all is because for 5 years, not one Black elected official in Frankfurt had a bill heard. Not one for 5 years. And then of course I had to bring it up because I can't help myself. And some of those Black folks who were elected officials got mad at me for bringing it up. I was like, Lord help my people. So for 5 years, we did not even get a bill heard in a committee. So it's not that some of us were up there trying to do the work, it's that legislators would not allow us to represent you fully in the way in which you should be represented. So here's what the Maternal Care Act would have done had it passed. So it would have allowed Medicaid to cover doula support, not just for wealthy people, but for everyone. So whether it's a mama in Mayfield or a mama in Moorhead, they would have gotten that support. The Maternal Care Act would have covered lactation support services and breastfeeding equipment through Medicaid. I remember growing up being told breast is best, and when I had my 2 kids, I believed that, and I still do. And I wanted to make sure that the people who wanted to breastfeed, that they had support, because it can be expensive when you're living in poverty. And then it would have established a right to dignity in childbirth. Dignity in childbirth. So every person, regardless of race, age, income, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or language proficiency, every person deserves to be treated with dignity during and after childbirth. It shouldn't be controversial, but apparently the state legislature thought that was a little bit too much, and they weren't even interested in a conversation. Remember, the state legislature is mostly men. And every time somebody's like, but you have daughters, you have a wife, they don't care about them either. Oh, let me say focus. Because yes, we're at the United Way, so it'll be nice. So Kentucky could have been a national model if it had bothered to pass the Maternal Care Act, but it chose not to. So here we are. So I want to come back to where we started, joy. So here are some things that I believe were reflections of joy for me in the state legislature. I stood on the House floor and I spoke in support of midwifery legislation. Joy, pure joy to do that. My former colleague, State Representative Lisa Wilner, has now taken on the task of filing the menstrual equity bill to remove the tax for menstrual hygiene products and baby products. Pure joy to see that work continue. As I said before, I voted with joy against every anti-abortion bill. Pure joy. And I was in the legislature through 2022 when some of the worst bills were filed and passed. And there were awful bills that were filed and passed before that. I was sharing with someone that on the House floor, a state representative literally said that there were mounds and mounds of fetuses that we could go see from all of the abortions that had occurred. When I asked where those mounds and mounds of fetuses were, I did not get a location. Because I want you to see for myself where they were. So I suspect they didn't exist, but I'm not gonna call someone a liar right now. But that was joy to be able to stand up on the House floor or sit in committee and speak in support of every single person in this room that is doing the work of infant and maternal health justice. That was important to me. So listen, I took my experience with my own high-risk pregnancy to Frankfurt to help future mamas, and where else I find joy is to the question about running for office. I love it when I see people running for office. That gives me joy. It gives me joy to support mamas who are bold enough to run for office. Y'all, a single mama of two when I ran for Louisville Metro Council and won, and a single mama of two when I ran for state representative and won. You can do it. You can do it. And we have to support you, right? It's one thing to say that we'll support you, it's another thing to actually do it. So when the mamas in your life decide to run for office, support them with everything that you can, because our reality is different. It's so different than when men decide to run for office, because I don't recall a man being asked who was going to take care of the children when they were in office. But I know what that's like to have that question asked of me. Who's going to take care of the children? Because I'm going to be in Frankfurt. Because I'm born and raised in Louisville. It's not like I don't have a whole family and support system, but that wasn't their business. Because they didn't ask the men who were in the race with me who was going to take care of the children. So I want to close with this, and then I'll open it up to any additional questions that y'all have. I believe that we all deserve care, that pregnant people deserve care, that babies deserve care. I believe that we all deserve to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive. And I believe that policy is, can be, and should be joyful, because it should be making a difference in people's lives. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you this afternoon. And if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to do my best to answer them. So does anyone have any questions?
All these flashbacks from where my house was, down the hallways of Frankfurt on the marble floors, is hitting me in this discussion today. But I just wanted to highlight, reiterate everything that you said. When the people who are in Frankfurt on floors 2, 3, 4, our representatives and our senators, they were voted in, and they are for the people, by the people. So I remember my first time meeting with a legislator, and I was so nervous because you're going in their office. But I'm like, this is a human being that ran for office to be for the people, right? So the more our voices show up in these offices, you guys, because we have a right to meet with our legislator, right? We are the constituents. You go meet with your senator, you meet with your representative, and you share your life experience so they know. Because I won't call anybody out, but we were working on paid leave 2 sessions ago. And some of the things that you hear on there are completely like there were people who were like, you know, women should be at home with their baby. You know, paid leave doesn't make sense. It's expensive. And we know that evidence shows that paid leave for families is evidence-based to support infant health, right? Like, we know this in the room, but it's just that education piece was just, I was just floored at the things that you would walk into the room and be like, oh my gosh, really? So anyway, I just wanted to reiterate everything that you said, and I appreciate everything you do and continue to do in those hallways of Frankfurt. So
I appreciate that, and I will affirm that by saying when I do trainings for groups that may be doing legislative advocacy for the first time, one of the things that I say to people is, these are folks who pump gas as expensive as it is right now, and buy groceries as expensive as they are right now, just like the rest of us. Please don't put them, me when I was in office, no one on a pedestal, because they really aren't that different from anybody sitting at this table. So you're gonna know more than they are about your topic, about your issue. Trust me, you're gonna know so much more. So you go in there clear, you are the expert. You are the expert, and that's how you have to walk into those rooms. Any other questions about policy and advocacy? All right, oh. How many steps do you have so far?
What we've talked about, you know, ways of potentially running for office, but what are some ideas or words of encouragement for like grassroots efforts to change the people who are currently representing us and get a little bit more ideal representation?
About what? I didn't get the last part.
I said ideal representation.
Okay, ideal representation. So, I mean, it goes back to the point that we just heard, which is every single person in office was elected. Every single person, even somebody who was appointed to fill a vacancy, ended up having to run at some point to keep that seat. So everyone who's in office was elected. Everyone who's in office can be sent back home by someone else who runs. I know I've been that person to have lost races and to have won races. I've done both. I know what that experience is like. You know, ran and removed someone who was a state representative for 35 years. So it can be done. And what I encourage folks to do is support the people who are willing to do that. You probably know somebody anybody in here thinking about running for office? Anybody in here at all thinking about running for office? We have to change this. We don't have enough women in office. And we certainly don't have enough Black women and women of color in office, y'all, at all. So we have to, it won't change if people aren't willing to run. It will not change. Y'all, I'm telling you, on most issues, you're gonna be the most intelligent person in the room, whether it's at the local or state level. I'm telling you that right now. It's not geniuses who are running for office. Well, I'm at the United Way, I'm being nice. All kinds of people run for office with all kinds of common sense or no sense. So I would say, if you want somebody out of office, look to see if there's someone in that district who is interested in running. That's one of the things I will say about the folks who right now are running for office, who are on the ballot. Many of them were encouraged to run. Women have to be asked 7 times if they would be willing to run for office. 7 times. I know what that was like. Because even though my girlfriends were like, we want you to be the person to run, it took some massaging for them to get me to the point where I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So encourage someone to run, be willing to support them by knocking on doors, making phone calls. And at the same time, the people who are in office, hold them accountable. When somebody has a coffee with your council person, show up. Show up. Ask questions. Sometimes, y'all, they might have 3 people who show up. 3 people. And council members represent about 26,000 people or so. And 3 people will show up. So show up. When your state representative or your state senator is having a community conversation or town hall, many of them don't, unfortunately. But if they do, show up. Ask questions. Bring other people with you so you're not by yourself. Show up, hold them accountable. And if you're able, go to a school board meeting. They give you 3 minutes to speak on a topic. Use that 3 minutes. Go to a Metro Council meeting. They give you 3 minutes to speak on a topic. Use those 3 minutes. or go to Frankfurt if you're able and testify on the subject, because they need to see your faces and they need to hear your stories. Any other questions? All right, y'all, thank you so much.
Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative.
They're asking me about everything, local, state, federal, all the time. How do I do this? How do I do that? Why can't I get a speed hump? What's going on with the consent decree? Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning.
Whether it's being a mother of 6 or a grandmother of 4 with one on the way, whether it's running the Bail Project, whether it's standing up for what's right, whether it's being your council person for District 3.
This has been something that we as a body should recognize.
Whether it's working to fix the issues in this city. Whether it's being the executive director of Vocal Kentucky. We now understand what's needed in this city, and that is new leadership. Louisville, it's time. I've seen enough of Louisville from many vantage points to know what we need as a city. We all agree that we need new leadership. I'm hoping, 1, you go and vote on May 19th, and 2, I'm hoping that you vote Shamika Parrish Wright to be your next mayor.
This is brought to you by the people to elect Shamika Parrish Wright.
Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative, and you're joining me today on State Election Night.
We will continue to provide updates as we have more information.
And you're joining me today on State Live Stream.